For nearly 20 years, the CIA insisted that one of its former officers had gone rogue, sold out his country, and trained terrorists for a hostile foreign regime. They testified under oath that he had no relationship with the agency, no mission, no authorization, no contact. The jury believed them. He was convicted and buried inside a federal prison system designed to cut him off from the outside world. But from a 6 by 9 foot cell, with no access to intelligence networks, no clearance, and no power, he began forcing the United States government to search for documents they claimed did not exist. Years later, inside a classified vault, those documents would suggest that the CIA's own story couldn't possibly be true. In 1983, a man named Edwin P. Wilson was sentenced to decades in federal prison for selling explosives, weapons, and military expertise to Libya. The United States government didn't just call him a traitor, they described him as the worst breach in CIA history. According to prosecutors, Wilson was a rogue former intelligence officer who had gone freelance, training Libyan operatives, helping manufacture explosives, and working directly with the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. But Wilson insisted on something almost impossible to believe. He claimed he wasn't rogue at all. He claimed he was still working for the Central Intelligence Agency, and that everything he had done in Libya had been authorized as part of an unofficial intelligence mission. From a prison cell roughly 6 feet by 9 feet in size, he decided he was going to prove it. Wilson had not been some low-level analyst buried in paperwork. He worked as a logistics specialist inside the CIA, the kind of officer responsible for moving equipment, personnel, money, and technical support through the hidden infrastructure of covert operations. Later, he also worked with U.S. naval intelligence. By the mid-1970s, Wilson officially left government service, at least on paper. But what happened next depends entirely on who you believe. Shortly after leaving, Wilson began developing private business connections with Libya, a country that at the time was openly hostile to the United States. He negotiated contracts, arranged equipment transfers, and most controversially, allegedly helped train Libyan operatives in explosives manufacturing techniques. To the Justice Department, this was simple. Wilson had sold out his country for money. To Wilson, it was something else entirely. He claimed the CIA had asked him to maintain contact with Libya as an unofficial asset, someone who could operate in places where official U.S. personnel could not be seen. No badge, no paperwork, and no official protection if anything went wrong. By 1982, Wilson was living comfortably inside Libya. Then came a message from the United States. A former associate contacted him with what appeared to be an opportunity to re-establish contact with American intelligence officials. Wilson agreed to travel to the Dominican Republic for a meeting that he believed would help restore his standing with U.S. agencies. Instead, it turned out to be a carefully coordinated sting operation. The moment his plane landed, Wilson was arrested in a covert operation arranged by American authorities and quietly transferred back to the United States to stand trial. In court, Wilson mounted a defense that stunned even his own attorneys. He claimed that everything he had done for Libya had been conducted with CIA knowledge and approval. His legal team requested access to classified documents they believed could prove he had been acting under U.S. direction during the time period in question. The government responded that those documents did not exist, and that even if they did, national security restrictions would prevent their release in open court. Then came the testimony that would ultimately decide everything. A sworn affidavit from CIA official Charles A. Briggs stated clearly that Wilson had no relationship with the agency after leaving government service. According to this testimony, Wilson had received no assignments, no authorization, and no operational tasking of any kind from the CIA after his departure. To a jury, this was devastating. Without access to classified materials, and without the ability to question intelligence officials in an open courtroom, Wilson had no practical way to challenge the agency's claims. The jury convicted him, and he was sentenced to decades in federal prison. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But Wilson refused to accept it. From solitary confinement, Wilson began filing requests under the Freedom of Information Act. Again and again, he demanded records from intelligence agencies, communications logs, internal memoranda, and any documentation referencing his work after leaving official government employment. His requests were denied. He appealed. They were denied again. He appealed again. Over a period of years, Wilson forced the government into a slow and grinding bureaucratic trench war, Compelling agencies to conduct searches for documents they had previously insisted did not exist. Eventually, something began to surface. Internal CIA communications referencing Wilson. Mentions of contacts that appear to have occurred after his supposed departure from the agency. Administrative records that directly contradicted sworn testimony presented during his trial. A lawyer with the necessary security clearance was eventually brought into a classified review vault to examine newly uncovered materials. Inside were documents suggesting that Wilson may, in fact, have maintained some operational relationship with U.S. intelligence during the exact period. Prosecutors had argued he was acting entirely on his own. In other words, the affidavit that helped secure his conviction may not have reflected the full truth. After nearly 2 decades behind bars, Wilson's legal team returned to court with a new argument. The government had withheld evidence that could have supported his defense and had presented testimony it should have known was misleading. In 2003, United States District Judge Lynn N. Hughes vacated Wilson's conviction, not because Wilson had been definitively proven innocent, but because the trial itself had been compromised by government misconduct. He was released after serving more than 20 years in prison. No CIA official was charged. No prosecutor was sanctioned. No public apology was issued. So what really happened? Was Edwin Wilson a rogue operator who exploited his intelligence background for personal profit? Or was he a deniable asset who became politically inconvenient once his activities came to light? The documents uncovered through FOIA did not fully exonerate him, but they revealed something equally unsettling. The same system designed to protect national security can also bury the truth, sometimes permanently.